Ladies and gentlemen, most people don't even realize they're under attack. Not by the economy, not by politics, not even by other people, but by their own mind. And the most dangerous enemy your mind sends isn't fear or doubt or insecurity. It's waiting. Waiting for a better time, waiting for inspiration, waiting for a sign. But here's the truth. The sign you're waiting for is never coming. Inspiration is a spark. Schedules are the fire. A spark can change everything for a moment. It lights up the dark, makes you see what's possible, sends a rush through your chest that makes you believe you can do anything. But if you've ever tried to start a fire in the real world, you know a spark alone is useless. It's fleeting. It's beautiful for a second, and then gone, leaving you with cold air and unfulfilled potential. That's how most people live. They get inspired in bursts. After a great conversation, after reading a powerful book, after seeing someone else succeed, and they tell themselves, "This is it. I'm ready." But 2 days later, the spark is gone, and they're back in the same routine that kept them stuck in the first place. The problem is not that the spark wasn't real. It's that it wasn't fed. A spark needs wood. It needs oxygen. It needs consistent fuel until it becomes self-sustaining. That's what a schedule is. A schedule is the deliberate act of stacking wood before you even strike the match. It's preparing the conditions for the fire long before you feel the heat. Most people think they can wait for motivation to show up first, and then they'll start working, but that's backward. You don't wait for the fire to warm you before you gather wood. You gather wood so that when the spark comes, you're ready to burn. And here's the thing, a schedule is not about inspiration. It's about inevitability. When something is scheduled, it no longer has to fight for a spot in your day. It doesn't have to battle with distractions or mood swings. It's already decided. It's a commitment you've made to yourself before you even wake up. That's why the most disciplined people in the world aren't the most motivated. They're the most prepared. They have systems that catch them when their mood fails. They've built rails for their train to run on. So even when they don't feel like moving, momentum carries them forward. A spark without fuel is wasted energy. Think about how many times in your life you've been inspired, really inspired, and did nothing with it. Maybe you had a vision for a business, or you swore you'd get in shape, or you promised yourself you'd learn a skill. In that moment, the idea felt alive. But because you didn't put it on the calendar, because you didn't give it a place to grow, it fizzled out. That's not laziness. That's physics. Energy without a structure to contain it dispersed. Without a schedule, your ambition leaks out into the air, like smoke, instead of burning into something that can warm you for years. They come when they come, and they often don't show up when you need them most. If your life is built on waiting for the perfect mood or the perfect moment, you'll be at the mercy of chance. A schedule takes chance out of the equation. It says this happens every day at this time, no matter how I feel, no matter what's going on. That level of consistency turns action into habit, and habit into identity. Once it's part of who you are, you no longer need the spark to start. You just keep feeding the fire. Feelings don't build empires. Repetition does. The world is full of people who felt ready but never acted. And just as full of people who didn't feel ready at all but built something extraordinary because they showed up anyway. Waiting for the right mood is like waiting for the wind to blow in the exact direction you want before you set sail. You might be waiting forever. The truth is, most days you won't feel like doing the work. You'll feel tired, distracted, bored, or overwhelmed. And that's exactly why repetition is the foundation of every great achievement. Repetition is not glamorous. It's not the exciting burst of starting something new. It's the slow grind of showing up again and again, sometimes with enthusiasm, sometimes with reluctance, and often with nothing but a stubborn decision to keep going. This is where most people give up, not because they lack ability, but because they confuse a lack of feeling with a lack of capacity. They think, if I don't feel motivated, it must mean I can't do this. But the real builders know that the work doesn't care how you feel. The work responds to whether you do it or not. Think about the athletes who train every day. Do you really believe they wake up each morning thrilled to push their body to the limit? No. They train because repetition rewires the body and the mind. Every day they lift the same weights, run the same drills, review the same plays, not because it's exciting, but because it ingrains skills so deeply that performance becomes automatic. That's what repetition does. It eliminates the gap between intention and execution. You stop having to negotiate with yourself. You just do it, because it's what you do. They change with your energy level, the weather, the people you talk to, or even the news you hear in the morning. If you allow feelings to be the gatekeeper, you'll find the gate locked more often than open. Repetition, on the other hand, builds a pathway that bypasses feelings entirely. You don't need the green light of motivation. You move whether the light is red, yellow, or green. Repetition also creates evidence. Every time you follow through, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. An identity is far stronger than motivation. If you see yourself as a runner, you run even when you don't feel like it. If you see yourself as a writer, you write even when the words aren't flowing. That identity is forged through repeated action, not through bursts of inspiration. Over time, the process becomes self-sustaining, because the act itself becomes part of who you are. But after you've done it 100 times, it loses the ability to intimidate you. You've seen it before. You've survived it before. The work becomes neutral. This is a gift, because neutral work is easy to approach. It's not a mountain anymore, it's a daily. Repetition is how brick by brick turns into a fortress. It's how small, ordinary actions accumulate into something extraordinary over time. You don't see the change day to day, but you feel it when you look back months or years later. The empire you build is not the product of one grand day of inspiration, but of 1,000 small days where you simply showed up and laid the next brick, whether you felt like it or not. Time doesn't take bribes. It doesn't slow down because you had a hard week. It doesn't pause because you're going through something. It doesn't fast forward because you're excited to get to the good part. Time is the one resource that treats everyone exactly the same. The billionaire and the beggar both get 24 hours a day, and not a second more. The only difference is how they spend it. The harsh reality is that time doesn't care about your excuses, your intentions, or your potential. It only measures what you actually did. They think, I'll catch up later, or I'll make it up next week, as if the hours they let slip through their fingers will somehow reappear on demand. But every day is a one-way transaction. Once it's gone forever. No apology, no amount of regret, no future hustle can buy it back. That's why people who respect time move differently. They don't wait to feel ready, and they don't postpone the important work until conditions are perfect. They know perfection will never arrive, but the clock is always ticking. Time is merciless, but that can be your greatest advantage if you understand it. Because once you realize you can't buy it, stall it, or replace it, you stop wasting it. You stop overthinking about whether you should start, and you stop waiting for the mood to strike, and you stick to the plan. You stop filling your day with what's urgent but meaningless, and you focus on what's essential but often uncomfortable. The clock becomes a coach instead of a threat, reminding you that every minute has a cost, and you choose whether to spend it wisely or waste it. The problem is that we've been trained to think of time as something we have instead of something we use. People say, I don't have time, when what they really mean is, I've chosen to use my time on other things. This mindset shift is uncomfortable because it strips away the illusion that life is happening to you. It forces you to admit that every day is a result of your decisions, not your circumstances. If you spend 2 hours scrolling, that was your choice. If you skip the work you promised yourself you'd do, that was your choice. And when you make enough of those choices in the wrong direction, you wake up one day with a life you didn't want, but that you built minute by minute. People try to soften the truth by saying, well, I'll be more disciplined when I have more time. But more time doesn't exist. Everyone is given the same 24 hours, and the busiest, most accomplished people you've ever heard of live within those same limits. What they've done differently is decide in advance how their hours will be spent. They treat the day like a budget. Once the money is spent, it's gone. That's why they put the most valuable work first. That's why they don't waste hours on things that don't move them forward. They don't try to bargain with the clock, because they know the clock doesn't care. The moment you understand that time is indifferent, you stop expecting it to feel sorry for you. You stop expecting life to wait for you to be ready. You accept that every day is a container with a fixed size, and you either fill it with the things that build your future, or you let it fill itself with distractions and regret. And every single day you repeat that choice, whether you acknowledge it or not, until one day you look back and see exactly what those choices created. The mind respects what the body repeats. You can tell yourself all the affirmations you want, read all the inspiring quotes, and daydream about the life you want. But if your actions don't match your words, your mind will believe your actions. The human brain is always watching, always taking note. It learns what's important to you by what you do, not what you say. If you tell yourself you want discipline, but you keep hitting snooze, your mind learns that your comfort is more important than your commitment. If you say you want health but you skip your workouts, your mind records that as truth. Over time, it doesn't even question it. It simply builds your identity around the things you do most often. Repetition is the language your mind understands best. When you consistently wake up at the same time, work at the same time, and show up for yourself at the same time, your mind begins to align with those patterns. It stops fighting you. The resistance you felt at first starts to fade, because your brain has accepted the new normal. At the beginning, that repetition feels unnatural. Your body resists, because it's being asked to abandon old patterns that were comfortable, even if they were destructive. But just like water shapes rock over time, your repeated actions carve new pathways in your brain, making what was once difficult become automatic. This is why habits are so powerful. They aren't just routines. They are proof to your brain about who you are. When your body shows up to work on the hard days, your mind says, "This is who we are now. We keep our word, even when it's inconvenient." That identity, once established, becomes self-protecting. The moment you try to skip or quit, your mind resists, because you're breaking the pattern it's come to depend on. Discipline stops being something you have to think about. It becomes the default setting. People make the mistake of thinking they can wait until their mind is in the right place before they start. They assume they need to feel disciplined before acting disciplined, but it works the other way around. You act first, even when you feel clumsy and unprepared, and the feelings catch up later. The body leads, and the mind follows. A soldier doesn't feel brave before the battle. They move anyway, and their courage builds in the doing. It's the same with your habit. The more you repeat the behavior, the more your mind comes to expect it from you. It's also worth understanding that your mind is an archivist. It keeps a detailed history of your actions, and it uses that history to predict your future. If your body has been showing up for years, your mind has evidence that you can be trusted to follow through. That evidence builds confidence, and confidence fuels even greater action. But if your history is full of broken promises to yourself, your mind will expect you to fail again, and it will adjust your expectations accordingly. This is why so many people struggle to believe in themselves. Their own track record has taught them not to. The only way to change that is to change the repetition. When you control what you repeatedly do, you take control of the story your mind tells about you. That story becomes the filter through which you make every decision. If the story says you are disciplined, you will act in ways that reinforce discipline. If the story says you are inconsistent, you will continue to act in ways that prove it right. The repetition is what writes the story, not the intention. That's why every single action matters, especially the ones you think are too small to count. They are the bricks your identity is built from, and your mind will always respect what your body proves, day after. Your comfort zone has a doorman, and it's you. You decide who gets in and what gets out. You decide whether progress gets past the velvet rope or whether it's left standing outside in the cold. Most people don't realize this because comfort feels harmless. It feels like safety, like a warm blanket, like something that's protecting you. But in reality, comfort has a way of locking the door from the inside. It convinces you that staying where you are is better than risking where you could go. It whispers that tomorrow is a better day to try, that you'll be more ready later, that it's not the right time right now. And because you're the one guarding the entrance, you let those excuses in without questioning them. The comfort zone is seductive because it rewards you immediately. You skip the workout, and you get to rest now. You put off the hard conversation, and you avoid awkwardness now. You choose the easy project, and you avoid stress now. But every time you let comfort in, you also keep growth out. Progress almost never comes with immediate rewards. It's slow. It's often uncomfortable. It demands patience. And because of that, it doesn't get past your guard unless you deliberately wave it through, even when you'd rather turn it away. The danger is that the comfort zone is self-reinforcing. The longer you stay there, the harder it is to leave. You start to believe that the small, predictable life inside its walls is all there is. You start to distrust the unknown, even when the unknown might hold something better. You tell yourself you're avoiding failure, but what you're really avoiding is the growth that comes from trying. And here's the harsh truth. You're the one making that choice every single time. The doorman doesn't work for anyone else. It works for you. That means allowing in things that scare you, bore you, or make you doubt yourself at first. It means letting in the unfamiliar and the challenging. It means opening the gate to opportunities you don't feel fully prepared for. You can't just tell yourself you want to grow. You have to grant growth, access into your life, even when every instinct tells you to shut it out. Sometimes the hardest part is recognizing when comfort is disguised as something reasonable. It shows up as I'll start when I have more time, or I just need to get through this busy season first. These sound logical, but they're just comfort wearing a suit. They're polite excuses that you happily wave past the velvet rope because they don't look like fear, but they are. And every time you let them in, you're turning away the very experiences that could make you stronger, wiser, and more capable. The truth is, the comfort zone doesn't shrink on its own. It expands only when you push its walls out from the inside. Every time you do something uncomfortable, whether you succeed or fail, the zone grows a little bigger. The next time, the thing that scared you feels easier. The next challenge doesn't seem quite as far away, but that expansion doesn't happen automatically. You have to actively choose to unlock the door for discomfort and let it in long enough to do its work. And that choice is never made once. It's made over and over again, in small, forgettable moments that seem insignificant, but are actually the moments that decide who you become. Waiting is disguised surrender. It doesn't look like quitting because you haven't actually walked away. You tell yourself you're still in the game, still going to do it, just not right now. You promise yourself you're being strategic, that you're waiting for the perfect moment, that you're gathering strength. But underneath all those nice-sounding reasons is the truth you don't want to face. Waiting is how you give up without admitting you've given up. It's quitting in slow motion. The human mind is clever when it wants to avoid discomfort. It knows that openly quitting feels bad, so it invents softer exits. It whispers that you'll start when you feel more confident, when life is less chaotic, when you've learned a little more. And those whispers feel reasonable because they remove the immediate pain of starting. But what they also remove is momentum. Without movement, your goal drifts further away, even if you're still talking about it every day. In your mind, you're holding on to the dream. In reality, you're watching it slip through your fingers. The danger with waiting is that it keeps you from failing right now, but it also keeps you from succeeding. It creates the illusion that you still have control because technically you haven't stopped. You've just postponed. But control doesn't come from holding an idea in your head. It comes from moving it forward in the real world. Waiting transfers your power to the future, to a time that may never arrive. Sometimes we tell ourselves that waiting is preparation. And yes, there's a kind of waiting that's intentional, the kind that gathers resources, develops skills, studies the terrain before moving. But that kind of waiting has a clear end date and measurable progress. The dangerous kind of waiting has neither. It's open-ended. It's passive. It's a holding pattern disguised as planning. You feel busy because you're thinking about it, researching it, maybe even talking about it, but you're not actually doing it. That's the surrender hiding in plain sight. Think about how many people are waiting until they're ready before they launch the thing they care about. Readiness is a moving target. It shifts every time you get close to it. The moment you feel almost ready, your mind finds another detail you need to figure out, and so you wait again. What's really happening is that you're protecting yourself from the discomfort of starting as an imperfect beginner. You're trading the possibility of progress for the comfort of avoiding risk. The truth is, there will never be a moment when you feel completely ready. The first step will always feel like a gamble. The only difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck is that the first group stops treating waiting as an option. They decide that the cost of standing still is higher than the cost of moving before they feel prepared. The most deceptive part of waiting is that life doesn't pause with you. While you're waiting, circumstances change. Opportunities close, your energy shifts. The people and resources that were available to you today might not be there tomorrow. Waiting feels like holding your place in line, but in reality, the line is moving forward without you, and every moment you delay pushes you further to the back. By the time you decide to act, the door you were staring at may already be shut, and all you'll be left with is the quiet realization that you surrendered your chance the moment you chose to wait. Discipline isn't punishment, it's protection. People often confuse the two because discipline demands things from you that aren't comfortable, easy, or instantly rewarding. It tells you to get up when you want to stay in bed, to work when you'd rather rest, to keep going when you'd rather quit. On the surface, that feels like deprivation, like you're forcing yourself to live under constant restriction. But discipline isn't about taking joy away from your life. It's about guarding you from the chaos that comes when you live without structure. Without discipline, life is unpredictable in all the wrong ways. Your emotions dictate your actions, and your circumstances decide your result. You wake up every day at the mercy of whatever mood you happen to be in, whatever distraction happens to cross your path, whatever temptation happens to appear. That kind of life might feel free at first, but it's actually the most limiting way to live, because you're always reacting instead of directing. Discipline is what flips that. It's what puts you in the driver's seat so that you're steering your life instead of being dragged behind it. Think of discipline like a strong fence around a garden. Without the fence, anything can wander in and destroy what you've worked to grow. The weeds take over, the pests eat the roots, and the plants never reach their full height. The fence doesn't make the garden weaker, it protects it so it has a chance to flourish. In the same way, discipline sets boundaries around your time, your energy, and your habits, so the wrong things can't take over. It keeps the unimportant from crowding out the essential. People resist discipline because it forces immediate trade-offs. If you're disciplined with your spending, you might skip buying something you want right now. If you're disciplined with your health, you might pass on food you enjoy in the moment. If you're disciplined with your work, you might choose effort over ease. But those are small sacrifices to prevent the much larger costs that come from a lack of discipline: financial instability, poor health, missed opportunity. The discipline you practice today shields you from the chaos that would otherwise come tomorrow. What they don't see is the freedom it creates later. When you've been disciplined with your craft, you have more opportunities because you're more skilled. When you've been disciplined with your health, you have more energy and fewer limitations. When you've been disciplined with your finances, you have more choices and less stress. The short-term discomfort is the cost of long-term security, and the people who thrive understand that bargain is always worth it. Discipline also protects you from yourself. It shields you from your own worst impulses, the ones that seek comfort over growth, immediate pleasure over lasting success. Left unchecked, those impulses can derail years of progress in a single decision. But when you've built discipline, you have a system that steps in before the damage is done. You don't have to rely on willpower in the heat of the moment, because the structure you've created already decides for you. When you see discipline for what it really is, a shield, a guide, a safeguard, you stop resenting it. You stop treating it like a prison guard and start valuing it like a bodyguard. It's not there to keep you from living. It's there to make sure you can live fully, without being constantly pulled under by the weight of your own unrestrained choices. Dreams rot without deadline. They may start out fresh, bright, and full of life, but without a clear date attached to them, they begin to decay. A dream without a deadline is easy to romanticize, because it always lives in the future. It's safe there. It's untouched by the pressure of execution, immune to the possibility of failure. You can think about it for years without ever confronting what it would actually take to bring it to life. But that safety is an illusion, because while you keep it floating in someday, time is quietly draining its energy. A deadline turns a dream from a wish into a commitment. It forces you to stop thinking of it as an abstract idea and start treating it as a real project. Without that urgency, you drift. You tell yourself you'll start when the timing is better, when you've learned more, when you've saved enough, when life feels calmer. But all those conditions rarely line up at the same time. And while you're waiting for perfect alignment, the dream loses its clarity. The details fade. The excitement dulls. Eventually, you're left with a vague shadow of what once felt like a calling. The danger is that without a deadline, there's no accountability. You can keep telling yourself you're working on it while making no actual progress. There's no moment where you have to face the reality of whether you're moving forward or just standing still. The dream becomes a comfortable thing to think about rather than a difficult thing to act on. And the longer it stays in your head without action, the heavier it becomes. It turns from inspiration into regret in slow motion. Deadlines change everything because they create pressure. And pressure is not the enemy. Pressure is what forces action. Even when conditions aren't perfect, it pushes you to figure things out along the way instead of waiting until you feel fully prepared. It forces you to prioritize, to stop wasting time on distractions, to confront the hard parts you'd rather avoid. A dream with a deadline stops being something you fantasize about and starts being something you organize your life around. It's easy to say you want something someday. It's much harder to circle a date on the calendar and declare that by then, this will be done. The moment you set a date, the clock starts ticking, and you have to decide whether you're serious enough to beat it. If you are, you start rearranging your habits and routines to make room for the work. If you're not, you'll find excuses quickly enough. But at least the deadline will expose the truth instead of letting you hide in endless preparation. Without a target, days and weeks slip by in a blur, and you might not even notice how little you've moved. A deadline creates checkpoints. It forces you to measure progress and adjust course before too much time is lost. You're no longer hoping you'll get there eventually. You're actively steering toward a finish line. Even if you miss the exact date, the urgency of having one will push you far closer to completion than aimless intention ever could. A dream without a deadline is like a seed left in a drawer. It has the potential to grow into something amazing, but without planting it and giving it the conditions it needs, it will sit there until it's no longer viable. A deadline is the act of planting, of saying, this begins. It's the point where possibility meets responsibility, and that's where the real transformation begins. Discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement. Everyone has goals, some big, some small, some public, some deeply personal, but not everyone builds the bridge required to reach them. That bridge is made up of small, often boring, repetitive actions done consistently over time. Discipline is the act of showing up whether you feel like it or not, doing what needs to be done even when it's inconvenient, and choosing progress over comfort. Without it, goals remain fantasies. With it, even the most distant dream becomes reachable. The tricky part about discipline is that it's rarely exciting in the moment. It doesn't give you the instant satisfaction that procrastination or distraction provides. It asks you to put aside short-term pleasure for long-term gain, which the human brain doesn't naturally love. That's why so many people can see the path to their goal but fail to walk it. The steps are clear, but they're not glamorous. Discipline demands a kind of quiet strength, the ability to keep doing the uncelebrated work while no one is watching, and no immediate reward is in sight. It's also not about willpower in a single moment. People often think discipline means having the strength to resist temptation in a high-pressure situation. But real discipline is built long before those moments arrive. It's in the habits you form, the systems you put in place, the routines you follow day after day. By the time you're tested, you've already built a track record of choosing the harder, better thing. And that makes the decision automatic. You don't debate whether to show up. Showing up is just what you do. Discipline also acts as protection against the unpredictability of motivation. Motivation is a wave. It rises and falls, often without warning. When you rely solely on motivation, your progress will be just as unstable. Discipline, however, is the engine that runs whether you're inspired or not. On days when motivation is high, discipline channels it productively. On days when motivation is low, discipline keeps you moving so you don't lose momentum. Over time, this steadiness compounds in a way bursts of motivation never could. If you've been disciplined, the progress will show. If you haven't, the gap will be obvious. This clarity can be uncomfortable, but it's also freeing. There's no mystery about why some things work out and others don't. Discipline lays the cause and effect bare, and that knowledge puts you in control. It also builds self-respect. Every time you follow through on a commitment you made to yourself, you strengthen your belief that you are someone who does what they say they will do. That self-trust becomes a powerful asset, not just for one goal but for everything you take on. People who have discipline in one area often find it spills over into others. The same habits that make you consistent in your fitness can make you consistent in your work, relationships, and personal growth. Discipline doesn't eliminate obstacles, but it changes your relationship with them. Without discipline, an obstacle feels like a reason to quit. With discipline, an obstacle is just another thing to work around. You still feel frustration, but you also have the habit of persistence. You've built up the endurance to keep moving, even if the pace slows. That resilience, more than talent or luck, is what determines who reaches their goals and who doesn't. Over time, discipline stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like freedom, because it gives you control over your direction instead of leaving it to chance. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, and failure is simply a few errors in judgment repeated every day. At first glance, the difference between the two doesn't seem that significant. Missing a workout today won't destroy your health. Skipping one sales call won't collapse your business. Spending a little extra money this week won't bankrupt you. In isolation, these small decisions look harmless. That's why so many people make them without thinking twice. But the truth is, these choices are never isolated. They stack. They compound over time, silently pushing you toward one outcome or another. The human mind tends to think in terms of big events and dramatic turning points, but life is shaped far more by the quiet, consistent patterns we create through our daily action. The person who spends 10 minutes reading each night may not feel any smarter after a week, but after a year, they're a different thinker. The person who saves a small amount of money each month may not feel wealthy at first, but over a decade, their financial life is transformed. On the other hand, the person who chooses the easier path, sleeping in instead of exercising, scrolling instead of learning, spending instead of saving, may not feel the impact for months or years, but the results eventually surface, and by then they're much harder to reverse. The challenge is that the effects of discipline and neglect are both delayed. That's what makes them so deceptive. If every missed action delivered an immediate consequence, most people would change their behavior instantly. But because the results are invisible in the short term, people allow small errors in judgment to accumulate until they've built a life. The same goes for positive actions. Because the payoff isn't immediate, it's tempting to quit before the benefits appear. This is why so few people maintain the habits that would change everything for them. They underestimate the power of compounding. But underneath the surface, roots are forming. With enough time and consistent care, those seeds turn into plants, then into fruit-bearing trees. Neglect works the same way, except it's like planting weeds. At first you don't notice them, then one day you look up and they've taken over. The small choices you make daily are planting something, whether you realize it or not. This is why success is never an accident. People may call it luck, but luck almost always shows up for those who've been putting in the work quietly for years. Those overnight successes we see are usually the result of thousands of days of small disciplined actions that no one applauded at the time. Similarly, failure rarely happens in a single catastrophic moment. It's the natural outcome of neglecting small disciplines day after day. The encouraging part is that it works both ways. No matter how far off track you've gone, you can begin steering your life in a new direction by changing the small choices you make today. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. You just have to start replacing errors in judgment with simple disciplines. Every day you make the better choice, you're shifting the trajectory of your life, even if you can't feel it yet. Over time, the compounding effect turns these small actions into massive results, and the gap between discipline and neglect becomes impossible to ignore. You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a week and underestimate what they can achieve in a year. They get caught in the trap of wanting instant results, and when they don't see them, they lose motivation and stop altogether. But the truth is, meaningful change is almost always the result of small deliberate shifts in direction that are sustained over time. You may not be able to suddenly arrive at your dream career, perfect health, or financial freedom tomorrow, but you can decide today to point yourself toward it and take the first step.
That decision alone begins a process that will carry you there if you remain consistent. Life is much like a long journey by road. If you're driving in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how fast your car is, or how hard you press the accelerator. You're only getting farther from where you want to be. The key is to stop, reassess, and turn the wheel toward the right path. Even if the turnaround feels slow, every mile traveled in the correct direction is progress. What often happens, however, is that people notice they are off track but feel so far behind that they choose to keep going the wrong way because the turnaround seems too difficult. What they fail to see is that continuing in the wrong direction will never get easier. It will only make the journey longer. You have to take an honest look at your life, your habits, your routines, your relationships, your use of time, and determine whether they are truly moving you toward your desired destination. This kind of self-assessment can be uncomfortable because it forces you to acknowledge where you've been settling for less or avoiding necessary action. But without that awareness, you can spend years working hard and still ending up somewhere you never wanted to be. Hard work matters, but hard work applied in the wrong direction is just another form of wasted energy. Once you've identified the shift you need to make, the next challenge is consistency. The first day of a new direction feels exciting. Motivation is high, but eventually, the novelty fades, and the effort feels repetitive. This is where most people revert to old habits, because they mistake boredom for failure. In reality, boredom is just a sign that the new path is becoming part of your routine, and that's a good thing. The people who succeed are not necessarily the most talented or the most motivated. They are simply the ones who keep moving in the right direction long enough for momentum to build. Another important truth is that the earlier you correct your direction, the less effort it takes to reach your goal. Think about a ship navigating the ocean. A small adjustment in the early stages can mean arriving at a completely different destination thousands of miles away. If the captain waits until they're close to the wrong shore, the detour becomes far longer and more difficult. In the same way, changing your personal direction now, before the wrong path becomes deeply ingrained, can save you years of frustration and wasted potential. What often surprises people is how quickly things begin to shift once they commit to a better direction. While the ultimate destination takes time, small wins start showing up almost immediately. More energy from better health choices, more confidence from developing skills, more clarity from cutting out distraction. These early wins act as proof that the change in direction is working, and they fuel the persistence needed to keep going. But you only experience them if you make that initial decision to turn the wheel and stay the course. Stop waiting for the universe to give you permission. Stop praying for a sign when you already have a clock. Your future is not hiding in the clouds. It's sitting in your calendar. From this moment, don't ask for a sign, set a schedule, and keep it like your life depends on it, because it does.